Welcome back to Comics with Drew. I'm Drew, and today we have a very special review. This is Elysian Fields, the Pyramid Gambit. It doesn't say Pyramid Gambit here, but it is indeed the Pyramid Gambit. This is the sequel to this book, Elysian Fields. This is the first book I reviewed on my channel as far as an independent comic book is concerned. And it had a lot of really great qualities to it. And just flipping through here, the coloring was awesome. The production value was fantastic, and the book was turned around very quickly, and it was just a great campaign, a great crowdfunding success. It's really something that I think that most people who are creators should be aspiring to, is the level of professionalism that Michael Oden up here has exhibited in running Elysian Fields as an intellectual property. So this was the first book. As you can see, it's got a fantastic cover. I was very impressed with it. Consequently, we had the Elysian Fields Pyramid Gambit as a real quick follow-up to the Elysian Fields campaign. I believe you were able to actually pick up the Elysian Fields book as well, the original one with this campaign. I did not do that. I just went ahead and got the actual primary cover because that's how I roll. I always like to get the primary cover. As you can see, this is Nine Realms Publishing, and I'm very excited to see this book. I'm very excited to have it in my hands. As you can see, this is a perfect bound book, and it's just really high quality. Excellent production quality as far as the printing of the book is concerned. Now, I've read the book, and as far as writing is concerned, this is a very good story, and it really actually, I think Oden really in Comicsgate is one of the better writers out there, and I highly recommend that you get a look at his stuff. He's got this one, and he also has The Embrace, which is a superhero kind of comic book. And if you followed my Twitter, you've seen that I've done actual sketch cards in support of that campaign. Now, this book is also a cautionary tale because the quick turnaround time on this has left very little room for margin of error. And unfortunately, some of the people that have worked on this book, there's been some error. And I've talked with Oden about it, and he is very apologetic about things that are in this book that should not be in it as far as errors are concerned. But when you're trying to turn things around quickly, you've got a decision to make. So are you going to put out the book that you want it to be as far as best as it can possibly be and go over budget? Or are you going to just get the book out the way it is as far as production is concerned when the time comes to get it to press and get it into backers' hands? And Oden has decided that it's better to get the book out on time, even if there are flaws in the book, which is a reasonable standpoint to have. It's a reasonable perspective to be working with. So we're gonna talk about some of those here. And this, again, this isn't a situation where I'm trying to destroy or tear apart the book, okay? So, you say what you may say about, people having errors in their books or typos in the books, which is very frustrating. It's something I've talked about, but at least you have this book. So you have other books that don't ever seem to get into the hands of backers. There are several books out here that are pushing 2 years being late to backers. Not when the campaign ended, but when they were supposed to be originally delivered. They're 2 years past that. To me, that is completely unacceptable. So Elysian Fields was funding in the fall of 2020, and here it is, boom, on my desk. So without further ado, let's get into it. The book is signed, and it's signed with a silver marker. Elysian Fields, The Pyramid Gambit, story by Michael Oden. Interior art is Marcelo, Oliveira, Costa, and we have letter SK and proofer Katrina Rhodes. Now, one thing we might want to pay attention to in the future is let's let these things dry, because if we don't let them dry, we might get some bleed over here on the second page. And if this second page is actually covered in any kind of real art, then that could be a real big problem. To set this book up here, what Elysian Fields is really about is it's about mythological deities who are actually losing their life force. And the idea here is that their life force is bound up in mortals that follow them. So because the human populace and mortal populace is becoming less and less religious and less prone to believe in these figures, they kind of fade from memory, and so they have a life force kind of mana kind of thing. And instead of going to war with each other to take each other's life force, what they decide to do is set up a tournament where each one picks the greatest heroes from their own mythologies, and they battle each other out in this arena. And if they lose, their life force goes to the winning deity's team. So it's important that these deities pick the best fighters that they can find in their respective mythologies to be successful in this tournament for survival. It's a really great premise. I think that there's some things that could be executed better in it, and especially when you're reading through it the first time, maybe even reading through it the second time, sometimes the impact of what's happening, you kind of miss focus on it. You kind of lose focus as to what's going on, or you can skip through it and you can miss it because maybe the art doesn't quite, focus on it the way it ought to be. I think that if we actually had more of a primer in the front of the book that explains what the Elysian Fields battle is, then that would be great. So Oden is a phenomenal writer. I highly recommend it to read the book, but I think that the book could actually gain from having a bit of a lead-in or a bit of a premise here. So, if you read Spider-Man books, you'll see a lot of times you open up a Spider-Man book and it'll start talking about the backstory for Peter Parker, which allows you as a new reader of Spider-Man, if you are a new reader of Spider-Man and you don't know anything about the character, you know instantaneously the background and then you can leap into the story. And I think this would actually be something that could be used very effectively for Elysian Fields. So we start off with a little recap of the first issue. Achilles has died. He's gone on to his reward, but then he gets dragged into this tournament fighting other mythological heroes. In this situation, he's fighting Gilgamesh. We open up, we have a spread here, and we've got Gilgamesh's head, unfortunately, lost in the gutter here. As a side note, if you're going to do a double page spread like this, you definitely want to make sure that you get the focus of the characters in the live area. So if you look at a lined comic book page, you'll see that there's a live area here. This is this dashed line. This is the live area, and anything that goes past this is going to get stuck into the gutter. And so it's very important when you're doing a double page spread that you make sure that the focus of the art stays within that live area and any kind of text stays within that live area. That being said, it's a great way to open up the book here. We're right into the thick of a fight. It's really dynamic artwork, the artwork that you can see. And then we cut to the stands and we have Nergal. He is a deity of Mesopotamia. As you can see, Nergal, Mesopotamian lord of the dead. And you have Hades here. And Nergal says, "You send a boy to fight a legend? I don't know whether to be thankful for your stupidity or insulted by your arrogance. I never took you for a fool, Lord Hades." And we have Hades here, and Hades says, "Nergal, old friend, you would do well not to underestimate me or that boy. Besides, you have much more at stake than I do here." "I suppose you have a point," Nergal says. "Rather than being insulted, I'll be grateful for the favor of sending your lamb to slaughter." And so then we have some trash talking here between Gilgamesh and Achilles. And I kind of wish that this fight actually went further than it does, but it doesn't. Achilles defeats Gilgamesh. Nergal doesn't take it very well. So immediately after this fight, we have Hades come down. He starts talking to Achilles and Theseus, who's also in the arena with Achilles fighting. And then he takes Achilles into the construct from the Matrix, where he makes a deal with Achilles to fight in the tournament. And if he fights in the tournament and they win the tournament, Hades promises to give Achilles his life back and let him go off into the sunset with his lover. So Achilles doesn't really have much of a choice, so he agrees to do this. Next thing you know, we're meeting Heracles, and we have your entire team here, your Elysian Fields. And then we cut back to a little while earlier before Hades had taken Achilles into his little magical deal room. And you can see that Nergal here is dying. And then we have it to be continued. Now, I talked to Michael about this, and it says to be continued, but we continue with the story here directly without any kind of break. Oden originally intended this to be kind of like the end of an issue, and this would be the beginning of another issue. What I would recommend to do in a situation like this in the future is have kind of like, a little fly page here where it has some art, and then you flip it over and then you go part 2 or whatever, and then that will continue with the book. But reading it as you're reading it here, it's a little bit jolting and confusing because you're not sure if this is actually a different thing or if we're just going on to a different scene. So it did kind of throw me off there. I will admit that. Once Hades champions have been assembled with Theseus and Heracles and Achilles, then they go into battle against Imhotep, who is the champion of Osiris, the Egyptian deity. Osiris likes to drop pyramids on people. It's a bit like Dorothy dropping the house on the witch, but it causes problems, and then the team has to fight their way out of the pyramid, and that's why it's called the Pyramid Gambit. The book is a great book. Definitely pick it up if you get a chance to. I don't know if Michael has actually any additional available copies of this, so it's pretty hard to get at this point. But when he does do another campaign, he's going to do a remaster of this issue. It's going to address some issues. And those are some issues that we're going to talk about right now. The first problem is we have a proofer on this book, and the proofer didn't really do too hot of a job proofing. First thing that stands out is we have a space that's missing here between strength and. So it should be strength space and, but it's strength and, so that's a real problem. We also have issues where the punctuation mark does not actually match the font style of the word preceding it. If you're going to have a bold word, the punctuation must be bold as well. If it's bold italicized, it's bold italicized punctuation. This is a real problem. We have the crossbar I in the middle of a word. This is something that I actually pointed out in the previous book, and it's still showing up in this one. Now, this book was actually lettered by a different person. The previous book was lettered by Luke Stone, who also had the same problem. Now, this book is lettered by SK. And here we go again with it. We have crossbar I's in the middle of the word. This happens when you actually leave caps on while you're typing. So the crossbar I should never be in the middle of a word. Crossbar I's are reserved for the personal pronoun I. And if you're going to use the letter I in an acronym like, say, FBI, for example. Now, we know that this isn't a consistent issue because here we have it in this Gilgamesh down here where we have the correct I. So it just goes on and on. We have this all over the place. We have it in Silence Mongrel. We have it in It's Fine. We have it in Right, and we also have it in Achilles. Then we don't have it in Relic. So, I mean, we have to have consistency, and the consistency should be like it is in Relic here. But then again, we also have Relic with an exclamation point that is not in the same format as the word Relic. So, again, Relic is bold and italicized. Exclamation point should be bold and italicized. We also have the infamous M dash right here, here, and right here, and right here. There are no M dashes or N dashes in comics. What you have is you have a double dash. And the double dash is reserved for when your speech is being cut off. So here, you would have a double dash where Achilles is talking, and he says, if I had my weapons, I'd, but then Hades interrupts him, but then Hades has an M dash here, and he's not interrupting himself, so we actually wouldn't even need that at all. So you could just move the word look over here to the top, and it would just be fine, and you wouldn't even have to worry about it. But again, double dash only used for when speech is being interrupted. There are no M dashes or N dashes in comics. To go back to another thing that I was talking about earlier with regard to the gutter and the live area on the comic book page, on this page, we have another big problem. We actually have a word that is cut off of the page. This is something that is easily avoidable. Keep the speech balloons in the live area. So if you don't know what the live area is, you need to figure it out, because this could have been a key point here in the conversation. This could have been a key point in the book. This could be disastrous. So definitely make sure that we arrange the speech balloons correctly so that they don't have any chance of getting cut off like this. As far as the art's concerned, the art is very up and down and uneven in this book. Here's Costa drawing Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh looks fantastic, it looks awesome. And then we have everything in shadow here, and then Gilgamesh looks like a totally different character. From here to here, he looks almost like a woman. If you're not really paying very strict attention, it can cause you to be distracted because you think, wait a second, is this a different character from Gilgamesh? Because, I mean, you would kind of expect the dreads to be kind of like at least silhouetted themselves, but there's no reason to have the black here at all. So I'm not sure what Costa is doing, but that is a real distraction. I would probably put this thought balloon down here because the focus on the art is here with the clash, and this is actually covering up some of the explosion. And we definitely would rather just have that down here where there's not much going on. That's just lettering layout, and the letter is actually responsible for that, so that's the real problem. Again, when I'm talking about the art being good in some places, right here it's fantastic, but then here it becomes kind of lazy. So what you could have been doing is just copying and pasting a bunch of different coins to fill this all out and add the texture. If you're gonna focus on the cape coming down on the gold ground here, or the coins here, you should probably add a little bit more depth and detail to it than what you see. And then when we're in the construct area here, it's just nothing but characters on white background, you know, and that could be intentional, but at the same time, you know, it's a jarring departure from what you previously were seeing with the battle in the arena. It does a good job of showing you that you're in a different place, but you could at least have a different color schematic, maybe like maybe a light blue or something in the background to at least give it a little bit more color. Also here, Hades' cloak kind of just like fades into nothingness. There's not really any reason for that to occur. Here we have Imhotep fighting here, but Imhotep, this drawing is exactly the same as this drawing. This is a copy and paste of the drawing. And I know that we're working on a tight deadline. To me, I mean, it works as far as the story is being told, but to me, it's kind of a bit of a shortcut that is unnecessary, but it is what it is. Then you have, again, you'll have great art like this, even though it's being copied and pasted. You'll have great art like this, but then you'll have stuff like this. And this looks like a rough on a napkin. So you can compare the crowds here, which looks like, you know, a bowl of rice, with the crowds here, which are much more detailed. And if you look really closely, you can make out characters and make out forms and figures. So you have that, and then you have this. So I don't know what happened here. Maybe it was late and Costa was just, you know, out of time or something like this. But this doesn't match up with the rest of the book, and it really hurts the quality of the book, unfortunately. And I know that Marcelo is better than this, but unfortunately it's in the book and this is what we have. I'm not gonna spoil the book for you. Definitely go ahead and pick it up if you get a chance to pick it up. I believe that Oden is going to do a remaster of this with a future campaign. He's actually done that with this book. With the Embrace book that's out right now, you can get the Elysian Fields remaster as an add-on perk, and I'm looking forward to that. I believe the next campaign for Elysian Fields is going to be called Pages of the Dead. And again, this story is one of the best stories going currently in independent comics, and certainly in Comicsgate, if you want to call it. I mean, this isn't really necessarily technically a Comicsgate book so much, but it's a fantastic book as far as the story is concerned, and you should give it a shot. Hopefully, going forward, we can eliminate some of these bugaboos with the lettering, with the proofing, with the art. This story deserves the best presentation possible. I know Oden is working really hard to do that, and I'm very much looking forward to the next book in the series. So that's Elysian Fields, Pyramid Gambit. I don't know if you can actually buy this book at this point, but if you reach out to Oden on Twitter, he may have some spare copies available. So it's worth a shot. Again, Elysian Fields, Pyramid Gambit. If I'm going to give it a 10 score, I would give the story an 8 out of 10, and I would give the production value of the book as far as the quality of the print another solid 8 out of 10. The art gets a 7 out of 10 because it's so uneven, and the lettering, I'd have to go ahead and give that a 4 because there's just terrible lettering mistakes in this book. And we just have to get some consistent lettering, again, in Comicsgate books and independent comic books in general. We have to get better proofing, and I think that that's something that can just greatly bring up the quality level of the book in general. But I love the book. It's a great book. Go ahead and get your hands on it if you get a chance. Again, this is Comics with Drew. I'm Drew. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, go ahead and hit the like button. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel to see new reviews as they're released and new videos as they're released. And I'll see you next time.